Good evening and welcome to the Carter Township of Van Buren Planning Commission meeting for Wednesday, September 28th, 2022. Have a roll call, please.
Brian Kelly,
Here.
Medina Atchison,
Here.
Callie Barr,
Here.
Sherry Bud,
Here.
Brian Cullen,
Here.
Jeff Jar is excused, and Vernon Grant is excused.
All right, we have an agenda that's been presented. Could I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
I move to approve tonight's agenda.
I'll support.
I have a motion by Commissioner Barr, supported by Commissioner Cullen. Do you have any comments or discussion regarding the motion? All in favor of approving the agenda for this evening, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And the motion is approved and the agenda set for this evening. I have approval of the minutes for the regular meeting of September 14th, 2022.
To the chair, I make a motion to approve the minutes from the regular meeting of September 14th, 2020.
Support.
A motion by Commissioner Bud, supported by Commissioner Cullen. Do you have any comments or discussion regarding approval of the minutes? We have none. All in favor to approve the minutes?
Aye.
Any opposed? None, and the minutes are approved. Right, we are up to our first item on the agenda, which is a public hearing for case number 22043 EHM Properties rezoning petition for 1166 Sumter Road.
I make a motion to open the public hearing.
Support.
And a motion to open the public hearing by Commissioner Bud, supported by Commissioner Cullen. All in favor to open the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None, and we are open for our public hearing.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. This item is going to have a public hearing component and a new business item component where the planning commission actually deliberates and makes a discussion and recommends an action to the township board. But for this portion, we're just looking for public comment at this point. So if the planning commission could just open the public hearing, receive comment, and close public hearing, that's what we'll do.
Okay. Thank you so much, Director Power. Anybody here this evening that would like to speak regarding this item? Yeah,
We can stand anywhere, it's just minor.
up to the microphone, please.
And through the chair, I might recommend, we do also have, these are the applicants for tonight. So if you'd like, we do have a section in the new business where you can describe your requests more in detail. This portion is typically used for folks who are making comment or from neighboring properties or that nature. So feel free to introduce yourselves, but there'll be a slot for you to give more of a detailed explanation later in the agenda.
Either way, it's up to you.
You just do it later. I mean, there's no one else here.
That works.
All right, Director Power, do we have anybody on Zoom this evening?
No, we do not.
I would make a motion to close the public hearing.
Support.
A motion to close the public hearing by Commissioner Bud, support by Commissioner Cullen. Any comments or discussion? No, all in favor to close the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the public hearing is now closed. That brings us up to item number 1 under new business. EHM Properties rezoning petition for 1166 Sumter Road. Director Power?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Planning Commission. I would like to just go through the findings of the staff report regarding this request. As you heard, this is a request by applicants William Ellis and Jim Mitty on behalf of EHM Properties to rezone a roughly 0.27 acre parcel with parcel number 125-83-112-02-0029-005, which is 1166 Sumter Road. It's currently zoned C Local Business District, and the proposed zoning is SRMU Sumter Road Mixed Use District. So this parcel is located on the west side of Sumter Road, between Cheney Street and Montague Street. What you have with you tonight is a planning and zoning application form and a narrative submitted by the applicant and a staff report that I wrote dated September 15th. So I'd like to just go through some of the findings from that report and explain the staff's rationale for our recommendation on this case. So again, this is 1166 Sumter Road. The parcel is about 0.27 acres or about 11,840 square feet. The current zoning is C local commercial, which is the zoning that you find along a string of properties extending north from Hull Road on the west side of Sumter Road. Near the site, you have to the north, south, and east properties that are also zoned C local commercial. And to the west, you have single family residential zoning in the R1B category, which is what applies to the rule of subdivision. Public hearing notices were published in the Belleville Independent on September 8th, and notices were sent to owners of property within 300 feet of the site on September 7th in accordance with the Michigan Zoning Enabling Act. This discussion tonight, unlike many recent discussions, is not highly visual, so I have really nothing that I was going to show you on the board. If everybody has your packet, I'll just refer you to some of the images there for where the site lies. You have a couple of Google Earth, Google map images on display here to show you some of the context of the area. The site contains a 922 square foot building that was constructed by our assessing records in 1930. And the parcel has been zoned as C local commercial for at least 48 years, probably going back as far as our records show on our zoning maps that we have on file, because we've pulled the zoning map that was adopted in 1974, and that's the zoning that applied at that time. However, the property had been used as a single family dwelling, which means that under the current zoning map, it was a lawful non-conforming use at one point. But the building was converted for use as an insurance office in the mid 2000s. And it became vacant sometime prior to 2019 when the current owner and their previous contractor had worked to do some repairs on the building. So due to the property's status becoming conforming commercial use, the property could not be reverted back to a single family residential use without being rezoned. And my understanding is that's the way that the applicants would like to market the property today, is as a single family home. And that's evident in the letter that they've provided as well. I would like to just emphasize that planning and zoning law provides the government a legitimate interest in maintaining compatibility of surrounding areas, protecting and preserving natural resources, and ensuring adequate infrastructure such as roads, water supply, and sanitary sewage disposal. And the way that we can accomplish that is by having a master plan and zoning restrictions that accomplish those interests and avoid overcrowding and preserve open space and maintain area aesthetics. So through the Planning Enabling Act of 2008 and through the Zoning Enabling Act of 2006, we accomplished those goals through our master plan and our zoning ordinance broadly. And more specifically to Van Buren Township, we had a full update to our master plan in 2020, followed by the update to or an amendment to a portion of that plan called the Sumter Road Corridor Plan, which was adopted by the Township Board on September 6th. And you'll recall that alongside that effort, the Planning Commission recommended and the Township Board adopted a set of zoning ordinance amendments that enabled some mixed use district that enabled variety of land uses depending on building types along the Sumter Road corridor. So the Sumter Road Mixed Use District and the Sumter Road Overlay District zoning ordinance amendments were adopted by the board over a series of 2 meetings on September 6th and September 20th. Those are going in for notification of adoption in the newspaper, I believe tomorrow, and they will be formally complete by next Thursday. So that means that that ordinance will be on the books and complete by next Thursday. So that is all to say that this review is contingent on the final approval process being completed, but that is consistent with the sequence we need to follow, because this is simply the recommendation by the Planning Commission for the zoning. The Board of Trustees will not consider this until probably sometime in late October. So by that time, Sumter Road mixed use zoning will be completely set barring any unforeseen circumstances. Now, I'd like to just go into the standards for review for this request. And these come from Article 12, Chapter 5 of the zoning ordinance, and more specifically, Section 12.504. For any rezoning, those are that's the section of the zoning ordinance that applies. So the first criterion is consistency with the goals, policies, and objectives of the master plan and any sub-area plans. If conditions have changed since the master plan was adopted, consistency with recent development trends in the area shall be considered. So I just reiterate that the Planning Commission recommended and the board approved the 2022 Sumter Road Corridor Plan and designates the subject parcel as a Sumter Road mixed-use future land use. So this is consistent with the goals and objectives of the master plan. The plan identifies the subject lot specifically as what's called a shallow frontage lot. And that is something that connects to a regulating plan in the zoning ordinance where depending on the building type, there's certain building types that are permitted as we discussed. Within this regulating plan, single family houses and the residential uses that align with those are permitted. It's a permitted building type that can be established on this lot where it has access to a residential street. The second criterion, part B, is consistency with the basic intent and purpose of the zoning ordinance. Section 1.102 of the Van Buren Township zoning ordinance includes regulations and restrictions governing the location and construction of structures and buildings to be used for business, industry, residence, social purposes, and other specified uses. Based on that intent, there are provisions in the zoning ordinance for setbacks, height, land use, parking and loading, access management, landscaping and screening, and environmental performance. Specific to this parcel in section 3.121 of the zoning ordinance, the Sumter Road Mixed Use District is consistent with the intent of the zoning ordinance by enabling a mix of land uses which are made compatible with their surroundings by adhering to specific building architectures, setbacks, and design features. I will broadly say with regard to criterion 3, that the street system is can safely and efficiently accommodate the use. This is a use that will have, if it is reverted back to especially a residential use, will have minimal traffic impact on Sumter Road and the adjacent cross street Cheney. The township's water and sewer systems and other services adequately serve this parcel. That relates to criterion D. That asks for the capacity of the township's utilities and services sufficiently accommodating the uses. Under part E, that the conditions have changed since the zoning ordinance was adopted or that there was an error in the zoning ordinance that justifies the amendment. The conditions certainly have changed. There was an adoption of a zoning ordinance amendment that we spoke about earlier. But this requested rezoning brings the township further into compliance with the recently adopted Sumter Road Corridor Plan and is in fact the first rezoning that's consistent with what that plan calls for. The amendment will not result in exclusionary zoning, which is a prohibition of land when there is a demonstrated need for the use in the community. The rezoning will be compatible with the site's physical, geological, hydrological, and environmental features with the uses permitted in the proposed zoning district. And I'll talk about those uses here in this section here, which for subsection H, if a rezoning is requested, compatibility of all the potential uses allowed in the proposed zoning district with surrounding uses and zoning in terms of land suitability, impacts on the environment, density, nature of use, traffic impacts, aesthetics, infrastructure, and potential influence on property values. Now, this owner intends for the property to be used residentially as a single family dwelling. In the event that a current or future owner seeks to use the building differently, the Sumter Road Mixed Use Zoning District regulations enable a variety of uses to be pursued subject to the site plan requirements of Article 12, Chapter 2 of the zoning ordinance. Now, if this zoning is in place and this building stays standing as what looks like a single family house, This would fall squarely into that single family house style of building that we called for in the Sumter Road mixed use zoning district. And if it does stay with that architecture, it would allow for any of the non-industrial uses that are authorized in the SRMU district. Some of those uses would be subject to site plan review by the Planning Commission. And some would be, if special land uses are considered, those would be subject to the Planning Commission's special land use process, which is a public hearing and recommendation to the Board of Trustees. If there is a different plan that that proposes to demolish the building or rebuild it to make alterations to make it a different building type, then the uses as listed in section 3.121B and C of the zoning ordinance would be permitted by right or by special land use, subject to site plan review and subject to special land use approval if necessary. And the Planning Commission spent many meetings and many months going over that list of uses to make sure it was an acceptable variety of uses and that would respond to the building types. So even if this zoning was applied and the building got demolished and a new building went up, it would be confined to those fairly restrictive set of certainly restrictive in the industrial realm with very, very small scale industrial being possible, but also just generally lower intensity commercial and office uses, and of course residential uses would be permitted. That is all to say that this set of uses would be compatible with the surrounding uses and the surrounding zoning in terms of land suitability. If a rezoning is requested, the boundaries of the rezoning district will have a reasonable relationship with the surrounding districts, and construction on the site will be able to meet the minimum dimensional regulations. I will say that the zoning boundaries being proposed are just the lot boundary. There's no there's going to be no instance where there's any kind of split zoning. So the zoning boundary reflects the surrounding boundaries of the parcel. With regard to the compatibility with dimensional requirements of the zoning district, I will mention that under the current C local commercial zoning, there's a 75-foot required front yard setback. Under the SRMU district, that's reduced down to 30. Now, you can't necessarily regulate for everything. And in this case, there is still a minor nonconformity with the current requirements, because I believe the front of the building is a little bit closer than 30 feet to Sumter Road. And that's true of, that's just true by virtue of this being a smaller lot on Sumter Road. But the requested rezoning will significantly reduce that existing setback nonconformity compared to the current zoning. Quickly, the future land use map designates the property as Sumter Road mixed use. So the rezoning district is considered to be more appropriate here from the township's perspective than the commercial district. If a rezoning is requested to allow for a specific use, rezoning the land is considered to be more appropriate than amending the list of permitted uses or special land uses in the current district to allow for the use. And we found that to be true. The same applied when we were looking at some properties that were residential properties under an industrial zoning district. The township has tended to limit residential to either the residential or mixed use districts. So it would not be appropriate in staff's opinion to bring in residential uses to the purely commercial zoning district that the property has today. And then finally, if a rezoning is requested, the requested rezoning will not create an isolated or incompatible zone in the neighborhood. As I mentioned, it would be the first SRMU rezoning, but it is consistent with the master plan. It would be consistent with what our future goals are for this area. So we think that this will be something that will not create spot zoning or an isolated or incompatible zone in the neighborhood. Among all of those comments, I've already gone through the grounds for the recommendation for rezoning. So at this time, I would just say that I recommend that the Planning Commission recommend to the board the requested amendment to the zoning ordinance to rezone the subject parcel from C to SRMU. And I would be glad to answer any questions you have about that.
Thank you, Director Power. So, yeah, to the applicant now, if you'd like to say a few words.
I don't know that we have that many words because Mr. Powell did an amazing job. They far better detail than I think we
Pretty much said, but the reality was, I watched the house empty for like 8 to 10 years, and it kept getting worse and worse. And we were really going down at the beginning of COVID, going down there and seeing it empty, and the guy was working on it. And we said, what can you do with it? We met the owner, said, we just want to make it better. So we did the whole outside, and that's where we got it, because we had to stop there. And then we came up against this. Well, the township's worked really good with us on getting it to this point. Dan's been a great help to letting us know what we were supposed to do, but all we wanted to do, the market was better when we bought the house, but I'm not really worried about it, because in the end, it looks way better than it was. And my son lives down that street, and all we got is compliments on what we've done to the place, because it was so empty and it was such a disaster. So just aesthetically on the outside, it was already good. So that's why I just said we had to fight it to figure out what to do.
Well, and even, you know, in the middle of that, we did try marketing as commercial property, thing is nice little office space, maybe a chiropractor, another insurance agent, anything along those lines. We literally stopped at like businesses up and down there, had it in the market for months and months and months. There was zero commercial interest in that space. So that's kind of where it's like, well, there's
We
obviously
do.
interest in people wanting houses, but there's just not a lot in that from a commercial perspective.
Could you put your names on the record?
Yes, I'm Bill Ellis.
And Jim Mitty.
All right, thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you for coming this evening.
Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions or comments from anybody on the commission?
Through the chair, I remember we were doing Zoom meetings at the time, and we did a public engagement regarding the Sumter corridor, and there was several residents that were completely in support of this location being everything that you did to it, all the upgrades that you did and taking care of it, because I believe it was an abandoned building, correct?
8 years at least.
Mhm. Yeah, so there was a lot of support for you, and that they had indicated they didn't mind if it had been rezoned residential. At the time, we did not have the Central Road corridor. Thank you.
Any other comments from any of the commissioners?
Through the chair, I like the idea of this being our first trial of what we've worked so hard to develop over the course, and I think that that's what we're looking for, isn't it? Is to see that be developed in some way and to be occupied.
Any other comments? No? Anybody from the audience that would like to speak regarding this item?
No.
No. Do we have anybody on Zoom?
We do have a Zoom participant now. Mr. Dark, if you have anything you'd like to add, feel free. Feel free to raise your virtual hand, type something in the chat. Looks like we don't have any interest in that, and that's totally fine. So we'll move on.
Thank you so much. Dr. Powell. Are we ready to take action on this agenda?
I would move to recommend approval of a requested amendment to the zoning ordinance to rezone the subject parcel 1166 Sumter Road from C to SRMU designation to the Township Board of Trustees based on the memo from Director Power dated September 15th, 2022, and the letter from the applicant dated August 23rd, 2023.
You have support for the motion?
I'll support.
We have a motion from Commissioner Barr, support from Commissioner Collins. Do you have any comments or discussion regarding the pending motion? And we've done, give a roll call, please.
Atkinson,
Yes.
Barr.
Yes.
Bud,
Yes.
Cullen,
Yes.
Kelly.
Yes. And your motion is approved, and you've got your recommendation to the board. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming this evening. That will bring us up to agenda item number 2. You're free to.
Next slide.
Free to wander.
You too.
Have a great night.
You do, thank you.
All right, agenda item number 2 is an extension request, case number 21019, request by Burger King Restaurant redevelopment and drive-through addition. Director Powell?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So as mentioned, this is a request which is enabled under Chapter 12 of the Van Buren Township zoning ordinance to consider extension of a approved site plan, which the Planning Commission has entertained in recent years. A similar request for a couple of different projects. But just to give some more background information behind what this request was and maybe to jog your memory, there was a request by Interplan LLC on behalf of Rovan Net Investments LLC, which represents Burger King, to construct a secondary drive-through lane along with landscaping and facade improvements and other architectural improvements with a remodel of the Burger King restaurant. That preliminary site plan and special land use were granted, or preliminary site plan was granted approval and special land use was recommended to the board on October 13th, 2021. The parcel is 11550 Belleville Road, Zone C2 Extensive Highway Business District. This request is, this case is undergoing a request for extension based on some of the factors that you see here in the letter dated June 15th from Burger King. And it's backdated a little while here. I wanted to make sure we brought this forward in case that anything turned up and the project did move forward. I wanted to make sure it was close to that expiration date, just to save an agenda item if it wasn't necessary to bring it back. But given that we are close to that October 1-year deadline, I thought it was a good time to bring this up. So the request is that, you have cost escalations due to supply and labor shortage, pricing escalations in the neighborhood of 40% as compared with the pre-COVID era, supply being very unstable as general contractors are unable to hold pricing. They're unable to procure kitchen equipment and other remodel enhancements, and operational issues with closing sites for an extended remodel with some of the labor shortage issues they're having. Those are the criteria listed by Louis Craver on behalf of Burger King. And just to give you some perspective of why they're asking for an extension. So staff supports the extension subject to the Planning Commission's approval. And just one other thing to mention about the site, there was a fire at the site. So you might have seen some construction activity just to get it back up to repair. And that was done under a separate contractor. But the planning, they're asking for that case to stay open and for there to be some more time to work on the final site plan for it. So I will defer that to you all.
Thank you so much, Director Power. With the request, is there a specific timeline that we're being requested to extend it, or does it automatically extend it for another year?
Yeah, the default is 1 year, and there can be up to two extension requests. So hopefully they can get things going again within the next year. So I would ask you to consider 1 year.
Thank you so much. Do you have any questions or comments from any of the commissioners? Any questions or comments from anybody in the audience this evening? Has anybody on Zoom any comments, Director Power?
No hands raised and nothing in the chat.
Ready to take action on this agenda item?
Through the chair, I recommend that we grant Burger King an extension of 1 year for the preliminary site plan approval for the Burger King location at 11550 Belleville Road, tax parcel ID 83081990040002. Based on the letter of June 15th, as a reasoning as to why they are requesting this extension.
Do we have support for the motion?
Support.
The motion by Commissioner Atkinson, support by Commissioner Bud. Do you have any comments or discussion regarding the agenda item? Oh, all right, we have a roll call, please.
Atchison,
Yes.
Barr,
Yes.
Bud,
Yes.
Cullen,
Yes,
Kelly.
Yes. And the extension is granted. That brings us up to general discussion and updates this evening. Director Power, I think you have a couple items for us.
I do, thank you. And this first one is a case-based update, just to provide an overall brief update, not to deliberate on the case necessarily, just to give some clarity. The Planning Commission will recall that you reviewed a proposed amended site plan for the Camping World project at 43646 North Interstate 94 Service Drive. Just knowing that this has been an active construction project with varying changes over the years, I thought it was important. And with some conversation about this that has been had in the township recently, I thought it was important to just provide an update on where that project stands. So just as a reminder, this request for the amended site plan, which I'm calling the West Wing plan, where there was a roughly 12,000 or 13,000 square foot addition on the west end of the building, was postponed at the regular meeting on May 11th. And that plan was based on amended site plan submitted by Camping World showing the addition that they provided with a date of April 29th. The request was tabled at that time. The Planning Commission had been seeking, among other things, some additional information regarding the various proposed repair uses in the store. But prior to that review, there was an approved plan, which I'm calling the original plan, for which final site plan approval was obtained on December 9th, 2020, and construction began in January of 2021. Subsequently, the east wing of the building was demolished in September 2021. So that original plan was a reduced scope that was meant to enable RV sales in the parking lot to the east of the building and no addition on the west side. So that was what preceded the request that you reviewed back in May of this year. And we've recently, just as an update, on September 8th, Camping World informed staff that they would be reverting back to the original plan with some minor updates to the plan. So I'm currently coordinating with staff on some of the very minor changes they made, but as of right now, they've indicated they'll be reverting back to that original store. Well, basically the footprint of the store that you see on the site right now, but with some additional improvements, and of course with the RV sales area around that east end of the site. So I will certainly keep the Planning Commission up to date. I'll coordinate with our staff, consultants, and code officials to review the changes as this moves forward. And of course, if the applicant formally proposes any other significant changes to the site plan or building, I'll certainly let the Planning Commission know. And if they don't, I will bring forward hopefully some kind of a formal withdrawal letter from the amended or West Wing site plan, just so you know that that's formally closed out. But I just wanted to let everybody know, because that is a project that's been ongoing for a couple of years, and there have been a number of changes to the design. So any questions you have about that, feel free to reach out, and we'll review it again if we need to. Otherwise, I'll just bring forward the withdrawal letter.
Can I ask a question real quick, Director Power? So what you're saying is that they're looking at withdrawing their plan, that they're going to go with their original plan, which we've already approved. So it's not going to come back before the board. They're just going to withdraw their application and then continue with construction.
That's what they've indicated.
Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
To the chair, Dan, when do you think they're gonna start going back to getting construction going so that they can open the store again?
They're waiting on pricing from some contractors, and they haven't given me a timeline yet, but they said they're working with contractors to determine what the pricing is and when they can get back started again.
Thank you so much. I think we have a couple ordinances as well. You were in our packet.
Yes, thank you. That would be my last significant update tonight, is just to give some perspective. The Planning Commission, you should be commended for all your work on various zoning ordinance discussions in recent years. Most recently, of course, we're working through some recommendations and consideration regarding residential development. But just to give kind of again, a status update on some of these, because some of these are kind of in process. Recently, the Board of Trustees had their second readings on both the Sumter Road Mixed Use and Sumter Road Overlay District and related zoning ordinance amendments, and the zoning ordinance amendments around gasoline stations. So those are well on their way to being finalized. We also are in what I would consider active development stage with the residential development ordinance consideration that we've had a few meetings on. That's still very much in progress. There is a consideration of smaller minimum floor areas for the ag zoning district, which we discussed on February 9th, and staff will return with findings on the impact of reduced floor areas if we are looking at considering those in the ag zoning district in terms of the things like the township's taxable values and tax base. That's one of the things that you on the commission had sought before we brought that back for discussion. So we will bring that research back. And the last one that I would consider active is electric vehicle charging stations, because you might recall that was originally part of our gas station ordinance discussion. Staff is looking at it's obviously a hot topic right now at the state level and at the national level. So we're doing a little bit of training and getting some research done to figure out what the best practices are for charging stations, but just know that that is something else we have in mind to work on. Other topics in recent years that are sort of pending, we have the exploration of seasonal or agricultural tourism uses that we discussed in 2021, outdoor dining and retail, looking at some things regarding pond ordinances. Those are kind of in queue, but not as high priority right now. So just to kind of give an update on where we stand with some of these, and just to kind of let everybody see the overall picture, because we certainly don't want to inundate too many of our meetings with these discussions, but I think it's important to keep the active discussions going if the planning commission agrees, and then we'll try to prioritize the discussions together and always look at ways to modernize the ordinance.
Thank you, Director Powell. Is the game plan then with the active development stage ones to try to finish those up by the end of this year?
That would be great. I certainly, I think they're kind of in order of priority. I think the residential development is a very broad topic. So there's a lot of things you could look at with residential dimensional requirements. I think we've gotten a lot of traction and a lot of good discussion on the development of those amendments. So I would certainly hope to get that done by the end of the year. And it sort of mirrors some of the effort on the floor area requirements. So I hope to have that done by the end of the year as well. With charging stations, I would hope that we can get something done relatively soon, but we want to make sure we have good research and present good findings to everybody. We may have a couple of the pace of our meetings might slow down a little bit toward the end of the year here, possibly with a quorum issue for the 14th or the 12th of October, and then with the holidays coming up. So we'll see what we can do, but we certainly don't want to overload everybody and have enough research done before we bring these things up.
Thank you. Any other questions from commissioners? Do you have any other, that's the last item. Do you have anything else for us, Director Powell?
Stay tuned. There may be an issue with some of our commissioners going to a training on October 12th. So as of right now, we're very likely not going to have a meeting that day, but I'll let everybody know if there's something certainly that the planning commission needs to address, or some reason that we need to meet at that point. But I certainly do plan on meeting on October 26th. I think we have a couple, including the ordinance discussion and a couple of other things that are probably going to come up by then. So stay tuned.
Great, thank you. Any final comments for this evening? Any of the commissioners? Anything? No? Okay.
Through the chair, I wanted to ask Dan about the meeting for the 12th. You know for sure that we're not going to have enough planning commissioners to have a meeting?
I know that we're gonna have 3 absent as of right now, so we'll play it by ear.
Okay.
Yeah,
I was just hoping to have a meeting that day. You know, I love meetings.
that's fair. Me too.
Just a hunch, but I think I know who would maybe be willing.
Oh, would it be me? Oh, forget it.
Yeah.
Ryan.
No.
Chain of command.
Uh-uh.
Speaking of though, I will try to reach out individually on trainings, just so we're all able to get to whatever training we're able to before the end of the year. So stay tuned on that as well. We're still tracking the training opportunities. There's just off the top of my head, there's a really interesting one on November 10th called From Exclusive to Inclusive. It's about kind of a timely topic about single-family residential zoning run by the MSU Land Use Extension. So that and some other opportunities, I'll try to just connect with you directly on and see if you're interested in attending.
Is there going to be a vote coming up at the state where they're presenting it for like short-term rentals in the next couple days?
There have been conversations in and out of the legislature over the last several years, and this one, I'll try to get an update exactly on what's coming forward. If it goes through the legislative process and up to the governor's desk, certainly. I know some bills have not made it past legislature in the last couple of years, but I'll see what status this one's in.
I think I got an update from Matt this morning that was asking us to reach out regarding it. So that's why I was curious if it was coming up today or tomorrow.
Thanks for the reminder then. What I'll do is at least just let the planning commission know what that is, so you can be well aware of what's coming forward.
Thank you. All right, sorry. Any other questions from public this evening? No.
I know. Through the chair, if I make a motion, we adjourn.
I would support it as well. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I oppose. Sincerely, I would like to have some comments. I missed the last meeting, and there was a lot of discussion about housing and the separation between the houses. And believe me, if I could have been here for that meeting, I would have been here. With that being said, I read the minutes, and then I also, if I had been here, maybe I could have had a rebuttal for it. I know that Dan went through and showed the support for it based on our zoning, our master plan that was that we worked on. I can't even remember when we started it. I want to say maybe the end of 2018 or so. We finally finished it in 2020. But from the comments and the communication that I had obtained from the Independent, I could not help but get the feeling that we had worked so hard on creating a master plan only to ignore it. We went out, we did a few public engagements. I can't remember if it was 2 public engagements or 3. From those public engagements, we were able to gather information, which was then collaborated on and put into our master plan. And then we decided to talk about it and then basically resist what our residents indicated that they wanted. We had several surveys that were responded to where residents came right out and said they wanted a variety of housing. They wanted smaller yards. Not saying that they want bigger houses all the time or that they want the houses 20 feet apart, but they wanted flexibility. They wanted more affordable housing. And as a planning commissioner, I consider myself a gatekeeper. However, I don't consider that I can say that what I want for the residents or what I want for Van Buren. I have to do what the residents want. We always want to do what's in the best interest of our residents. But we also have to adhere to the master plan that's required of us by the state of Michigan, that we have to update it, and I can't remember if it's every 5 years or every 10 years. But this is our roadmap. I don't know, really what else to say about it, other than I feel that we will get in trouble should we not adhere to the master plan that we worked on. I also find it like really kind of, surprising that we had a letter in here from a while ago, from August 4th, that indicated, we wanted to look at, looking at 10 feet between the homes. And it indicated that Lyon Township, Plymouth Township, Canton Township, Ypsilanti Township, Pittsfield Township, the city of Novi, all allowed for 10 feet. And I gotta tell you that I feel like we're missing out. And the last thing I want to happen is for Van Buren Township to miss out. You may think that all we're talking about here is 10 feet, and that's the distance. It's much bigger than that. And I'm gonna get to my questions here. It's bigger than that in the sense that, as this class indicates, we want to be inclusive, not exclusive. And if we decide to become exclusive instead of inclusive, we're gonna get into trouble, especially if we're not gonna follow what our residents have indicated in the master plan. There was comments made in regards to somehow being 10 feet apart, that distance is gonna indicate that somehow it's not healthy, it's gonna cause issues, we're gonna be fraught with issues. I'm not sure, I don't know how we receive that. Like, I want facts to prove that to me, because I'm not sure if we all know, but the building separation code set by the state of Michigan is not 20 feet, it's 10 feet. It's 10 feet, it's not 20. So here in Van Buren Township, we are limiting ourselves to 10 feet, or 20 feet versus 10 feet. Now, a comment was made, and I'm not being critical, okay? I just want everybody to know, I'm not criticizing anybody in this. But there was comments made that, Cherry Hill Village is not a desirable community. It's horrendous. That community was developed based on what the residents wanted in the city of Canton, or in the community of Canton, rather. It is a very successful residence. Maybe I wouldn't want to live there, maybe you wouldn't want to live there, but there's people out there that wanted smaller yards, closer houses, walkability, common areas, and open space. And that doesn't make them or the developer or that community somehow less than. But if we're going to limit ourselves, we're going to become very exclusive. Meaning that what happens is less and less people can afford homes. And the state of Michigan right now is working really hard to create affordable building during a time when we're getting extensions from builders like Burger King that they need more time to obtain high capital to build the Burger King. They're waiting longer for building materials. They're costing more. There's a lot of factors working against us. And the last thing we want to do is make ourselves more exclusive. Because again, that's going to get us into trouble. A comment was made about the wisdom of being 20 feet. The separation is 20 feet. All I can do is gather on some other things that happened in Van Buren's past. And that past is, we needed guidance. My understanding, and Sherry, you can chime in, is we hired as a township, McKenna and Associates, and they had to guide us so that we created a good community, that a developer didn't come in and take advantage of us. We're past that now. We're past that in a sense that we're strong enough. We have good directors with a lot of experience. We have residents that have told us what they want. And now it's time to give them the variety that they've asked for. When I said that it's not just the 10 feet, it's not just the 10 feet, because the more residents we receive in the areas that we have deemed we want buildable, residential, we want the rural area to be rural, and we have that. It is more housetops. So in the master plan, in our surveys, our residents said they wanted restaurants. Restaurants don't come to areas where there's less people living. Our residents actually told us that they go to Ann Arbor, and they go to Canton, and they go other places to eat. I want our residents to stay here. I want restaurants to come here just like they do, to pay taxes. I want residents I want developers to come here to build homes so that people move here and we can, as a township, as a municipality, collect taxes. A comment was made about, how was it made? Did we miss out on a development because of the 20-foot rule? My comment to that is, we can't count what hasn't happened. And any developer can go onto our website, onto vanburen.org, and see what our ordinances are. And if their ordinances don't adhere to things that they see as viable or doable, they don't come knocking on the door and say, I want to build here and I want to build 20 feet apart. They have some certain standards themselves. I really like the comment that made Director Powers have to work harder here. The list of what are the items that are good for this. And I think your job is going to be easy by capturing all the requirements that our residents had indicated they wanted. Because as a planning commissioner, I've been doing this, and a wise person told me that one day it's going to click. And after time, I feel like it is clicking and I'm understanding, but I'm understanding the bigger picture of it. And I don't think any of us on this board want to be an exclusive neighborhood. We want to be inclusive. And comments were made about drainage. Drainage is a whole separate issue that we can talk about. But I have to believe that if I can list off all these communities that have the 10 feet and that they can figure out the verbiage so that it is aesthetically nice, I have to believe that Van Buren Township can come to that too. I'm sure I have more, but I can't think of it right now, so I would just like to say thank you.
So, Director Power, I believe we have this set up for a couple meetings down the line to go over some of the updates and everything as well, correct?
Yep, that's the plan.
Yeah, so we're not making a decision on it yet, we're just setting it for public hearing. That way we can make sure all the commissioners are getting more input as well as doing some of the additional research.
We have not set it for public hearing yet. The next meeting, potentially, we would set a public hearing. So that's absolutely right. The next
So we come in-
available meeting.
If we come in, go over the ordinance one more time, and then we would set it for a public hearing, we would discuss.
Yep.
what's going on.
Yep, so good, another good opportunity to have that kind of discussion. So glad we're keeping the conversation going. I did just want to mention, if I may, Mr. Chair, that just based on that comment, I did have something in the chat from Mr. Stephen Dark. I completely agree with Commissioner Atchison from Stephen out there in the audience. So just to put that on the record.
And I believe you also sent in something to you directly, is that correct?
He did, and I'll certainly bring that to all the planning commissioners the next time this topic is scheduled on the agenda. So, yep,
Perfect. Thank you so much, Dr. Powell.
you're welcome. Thank you.
Right, there was a motion. Board kind of voted, but we kind of got sidetracked, so we have another motion to adjourn. Mr. Lund.
Sure.
Support.
Yes.
All in favor to adjourn, say aye.
Aye.
All right, we are adjourned for this evening.
Okay. Thank you, everybody.